In this video, I'm going to be talking about shooting with motion control robotics
and the new Laowa T8 Pro 2B lenses.
But firstly, Spec Work. I'm a big preacher of Spec Work.
It helps you level up and get work you wouldn't otherwise be in reach of. I'm shooting a lot of food and drink work these days, but before I was allowed to shoot my first food job, I shot this spec work to get approved for it. Then I created more work at that level before creating this sexier spec piece to get approved for sexier jobs. Now I'm both directing and DPing on a regular basis for more and more tasty and delicious food and drinks brands.
Something I've never had in my reel before is proper motion control.
I'm talking robots. You've all seen them. They capture otherwise impossible precision shots a human couldn't replicate. But unless you've got serious budget, they're often pretty tricky to get the opportunity to work with, because to own a decent one costs well into the six figures, and therefore renting one for a job, along with someone who knows how to operate it, is expensive.
I've gotten quotes on motion control arms with an operator before on jobs that never ended up happening.
And they range between £5,000 and £8,000 for the day.
A day.
So the chances of ever getting to try one of these out for some spec work have always been pretty slim.
Unless I sold my van or remortgaged my house. And not having it in my reel makes it far less likely that I ever will have it in my reel because I haven't got the experience.
Not only having the impossible shots to show people that I can capture impossible shots, but not having ever worked with a motion control robotics operator. How do I communicate what I want to them? What is possible to do with motion control robotics that I might not know about? And equally, if not more importantly, what's not possible to do? What are the robot's limitations? But then last year, over on the gram, I got a message from a living legend. Stephen, one half of Love High Speed, a company that has specialized in high-speed photography in the feature, series, and commercial world for over a decade now, shooting all things Phantom on some serious shoots. These guys are the real deal. Stephen said they'd recently acquired a robot Moco, or motion capture, for their studio in West London, and were looking to build out their motion control reel. Is there anything I wanted to shoot?
Yes.
I met with Stephen and his colleagues, chatted about what we might be able to do, and said I'd come back soon with some proposals. Soon probably wasn't that soon because work became manic.
But at some point in the following weeks or months, I came back to Stephen with 4 ideas that I wanted to try. But doing something like this for Spec isn't necessarily easy. You've got to line up everyone that's going to be involved's calendars.
But first of all, find willing participants. Set aside lots of your own time to plan, organise, prep, shoot it, and in my case, do the post too, and ultimately spend some level of money to make it all happen.
With all of this in mind, a busy schedule and a lack of availability from both willing art directors and food stylists, I said,
let's pick the easiest idea.
Something that we can shoot in a day and with minimal helping hands.
My longer time friend and collaborator Nathan was keen to learn some motion control as well, and offered to gaffer and even bring some of his kit.
And my less long time but increasingly good friend and assistant Shreya came along too,
helping to prep props, product, and even spark with Nathan. So between the 4 of us, we were going to make this work. The idea was simple. Heavily inspired by an awesome match cut product video Stephen had shared with me, I thought about how we could make it our own and create a loop for posting it on our collective socials. I then pulled together a bunch more references, ordered 500 quid's worth of trainers online that I would return scuff-free after the shoot, and a selection of colourful shoelaces I thought we could use to create some sort of texture on the set. Then created a large cardboard circle in a rush on my living room floor, using the heavy wooden tabletop from that round table job I talked about recently as a template, and prepped all the kit ready for the only available free day in my diary between September last year and March of this one. On a Friday morning, I packed the van and headed off to West London. The shoot was a really fun one, probably because we were all there because we really wanted to be. There was no client, no agency, just making something for the love of it, the learning and the experimentation. We all loaded in the kit from my van and Nathan's car. Stephen treated everyone to a Mackey's breakfast. I talked through the main shot I wanted to achieve before we all set to work. Stephen programming the move, Nathan setting up, putting up lights, Shreya getting involved in art department and prop styling, whilst I fannied about between all 3, setting up the camera, building the set, and wasting loads of time trying to set up a secondary motion control rig I'd convinced myself we could make work in creating the effect of a levitating hero shoe that kind of hovers out of the master box. But my tiny Edelkrone DSLR style motion control rig wasn't quite up to the weight challenge, so we inevitably gave up on it by the time we'd realised how much time of the day had already passed. We got the first batch of shots done, changing the shoe after each take on this less than perfect rig I'd bodged together with a mannequin foot I'd bought on Amazon, a bunch of cable ties, and a lot of gaffer tape. Screenshotting each final position, we'd overlay it on one of the monitors, trying to line it up as close to perfectly as possible, which proved particularly difficult after we realized even though I'd bought the same style of shoe in the same size, there were slight differences in the shape and styling of each one. A little over halfway through, I realized we should have just shot one plate of the master move and then be shooting each shoe separately on a blue or green chroma background, as that would have made manipulating them in After Effects a lot easier.
Balls.
So then we started doing that, not wanting to lose too much more time as the day was racing away from us. We broke for a brief Nando's to keep us going. It took way more time than I realized to get each shot right. Not just the fiddliness of props and occasional adjusting of lighting, but the programming of the motion control robot and learning its limitations. There were certain moves that were just too sharp for it to do smoothly without creating micro jitters. It can move in X space, in Y space, and in Z space, but it's not a snake flexing at its will at any point along its body. It has 6 different points of rotation, so we had to find moves that were a marriage of something that worked for what we wanted to achieve and something that worked for the robot. We shot this using my red V-Raptor because it saved on rental costs,
And even though Love High Speed owns several Phantom cameras, we didn't actually need to shoot any slow motion in this particular idea.
for that low, close, wide and macro vibe, we used the new-ish Laowa T8 Pro 2B macros, which are a real step up from the previous T14 options that I used to create these shots on my previous spec, well over a year ago now. Laowa were kind enough to loan them to me for a couple of months where I got to play with them on a few occasions on a couple of different types of jobs.
I should and will probably make a video about these lenses in more depth at some point. But the main thing that you should know is they're a lot faster.
T8 instead of F14, which is, I don't know because I'm not very good at this sort of thing, 0.8 stops faster, which is basically means more light can get to the sensor, so you don't need as much output in your light to light your subject. You can buy them in a set of 3 which differ in angles, a periscopic angle, a 35-degree angle, and one that's just straight on. This allows you to achieve viewpoints you'd struggle to get your camera or most other lenses anywhere near. And, like their predecessors, they're waterproof, up to a point, allowing me to create shots like this, for little reason other than I've always wanted to. Lighting-wise, Nathan created a book light, with a nice big soft hair light off to frame right, and a subtle hint of blue and a secondary hair light off frame left. At the back, I had an image of a large, seemingly floating circular shape that was backlit from behind. I was thinking we'd rig little MCs or something to the back of the disc, but then Nathan had the brilliant idea of cutting a bigger hole in the backdrop and firing light at the back of the disc through it. The spill wasn't doing quite enough, so we then stuck a bunch of white paper to the back of the disc to give it a more reflective surface to hit. Booklight was created using 2 1200Ds, bouncing into my big reflective Lastolite white something or other, and then coming through an 8x8 piece of diff. The hairlight was a 600D with a dome on. The backlight for the disc was a 300D, and then the secondary hairlight, the thing giving the little bit of blue, was an Amaran F22C, and then to fill in a bit of the shadow side, an Amaran 200D shot into some white bounce. I like it, but it's not perfect. The rough circle and the creases are not very premium product feeling.
Look at that circle, guys.
There's a lot about this shoot that isn't perfect, and on a proper shoot with a client, art department, and most importantly, budget, I would have had this all looking primo perfect. Maybe the 3 Adidas stripes backlit rather than the circle. But I just wanted to experiment and thought it would help add more depth to the shot than just a plain red backdrop. I am pleased with the results. As always, the post took me a lot longer than I would have liked, partly because I hadn't gone into this with any boards. I was kind of making it up a bit as we went because I just hadn't had enough time to prep to the degree that I usually like.
Or probably more truthfully, not being a paying job,
I didn't prioritize the time I probably should have done over more pressing paid projects that needed my attention. Then, even after I'd made the time to build and edit, I sat on this for the best part of half a year, every now and again trying and failing to convincingly extend the set in this main shot. And then, one day, like a knight in shining armor, Kia from Pineapple VFX appeared in my DMs and said he could do it. No sweat. And then it got leveled up again with the ultimate crunchy, saturated, tasty grade from my favourite colorist and mega gamer mate of all time, the uber-talented Jax Harney. It might just be a sub 15-second spec piece, but it takes an army. I can't thank you enough, those of you that were involved. Is this exciting and sexy enough to land me motion control work I may not have landed otherwise in the future?
I'm not sure yet, but I do like it, and it was a great first tester with Stephen at Love High Speed.
Someone who I'll hopefully get to do paid jobs with in the future.
There's already been 2 jobs that neither actually ended up being goers that I had tried to bring Love High Speed's way.
As in addition to the motion control, they also have a lovely large studio. Now, for our next motion control shoot together, I have a better understanding of what is and isn't possible, as well as most importantly, the time needed in the schedule to make it all work, of which, on this shoot, I hadn't even actually created a schedule.
Rookie mistake. Thanks so much to Stephen, Nathan, Shreya, Kia, and Jax for bringing their time and talents to bring this idea to life. You should watch this video next to understand exactly why I make so much spec work. And make sure to subscribe for more semi-helpful tips and interesting insider industry knowledge.